And hello, Jay. Welcome. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks so much for joining us at Secular AZ today. Again, feel free to put your name in the chat. In the webinar, we still haven't gotten Facebook worked out. It's a common problem. It's not us, it's them. As y'all know, if you're here today, you know that white Christian nationalism is the greatest threat to our democracy, and Secular AZ is your voice for the separation of religion and government. We are a nonprofit organization, and we act as your voice to elected officials all across the state and at every level. So be sure to check out all of our social media channels and like, subscribe, and share. We have some great programming. These Friday updates come from all kinds of amazing speakers. We have historians, authors, nonprofit leaders, elected officials, journalists, you name it. Next Friday, we get the best speakers, I swear. Next Friday, we're going to be speaking with a special guest, Matt Gertz. You may have heard his name before. He's with Media Matters, and he's going to be talking about how mis and disinformation is weaponized in the media industry. And he follows closely a lot of those kind of propaganda machines, so you won't want to miss that. But for today, we have somebody just as special and local as well. So today we're going to be speaking with Eddie Chavez Calderon. He wholeheartedly dedicates himself to social justice work, a commitment he has held since his teenage years. His personal journey, which involved overcoming obstacles and fighting for the rights of migrant communities across the United States, has shaped his unwavering dedication to justice. As a DACA recipient, Eddie intimately understands the challenges faced by immigrants, driving his belief that equal opportunities and rights should be accessible to all. Alongside his advocacy for immigrants, Eddie's journey led him to develop a profound connection with Judaism. Inspired by Jewish tradition, teaching, and texts, and guided by Rabbi Dr. Shmuley Yankovitz, I hope I got that right, Eddie converted to Judaism, intensifying his commitment to bringing justice and equity into reality. Eddie's Jewish identity provides him with a unique perspective on the daily struggles and systemic oppression faced by marginalized communities. Through advocacy and faith, he actively works to build bridges, challenge societal norms, and create a world that upholds the inherent dignity and rights of every individual, regardless of their background or circumstances. Drawing from personal experiences and the principles of his faith, Eddie remains steadfast in his pursuit of a more just and compassionate society for all. Like, nobody can argue with any of that. Right? People like to argue about a lot of things, but that is not one that we should at all be arguing about. So Eddie, I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm so glad. Like, I knew of Eddie like before, running for office, being in this space. But then recently he put out a call helping a Venezuelan migrant, and I was able to help in some small ways, and it just really made me feel good knowing that there's somebody out there like Eddie who is actively helping people, our most vulnerable communities. So welcome, Eddie, and I'm gonna just go ahead and pass it off to you.
Wow, thank you so much, Jeannie. That means a lot. Hello, everybody. I see so many beautiful people on this call that are just phenomenal change makers. I love the work that Secular AZ is doing. I think it's important in a time where a lot of faith is being weaponized to pass on a lot of hateful acts. I think that faith also has an important role to combat that. And I think it's important that we also work together in communities in a time of such negativity, a dark time, where it feels like we're so overwhelmed with everything that's happening. We feel like there's like, where do I catch my breath? Whether it's attacks on bodies, where it's threats to violence, where it's threats to democracy. Every single day, it feels like we cannot catch our breaths. Every day, it feels like we have to continuously fight. And this is where I think our mission of taking one step at a time and figuring out how we can support the most vulnerable in our community, I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. I think that little acts of kindness really are like little lights that illuminate and shed light of hope in times where we think that nothing can be done, where we think that everything is just hopeless. At Arizona Jews for Justice, we really have our pillars of justice, where we engage in supporting the most vulnerable populations by actively being in our community and actively working on policies that are here in Arizona that affect each and every one of us here. That being said, we really started to mobilize our work with asylum seekers. And Jeannie, you're right. That when I made the call, you jumped on being able to, how can I help? And that to us just makes our hearts warm to think that no matter what resources you have, there's an ability for each and every one of us to help. Now you're thinking like, why do this work? Why is it important to us? For two specific ends. Personally, being undocumented the majority of my life, I actually crossed through the border of Nogales here in Arizona. I actually was in a detention center here in Arizona with my mom. I crossed the desert and I know far too well what the heat feels like. I know far too well what it feels like to not have a single person to advocate for you. Growing up undocumented has really showed me that I felt like my voice didn't matter in a place where policies were put in place without even consulting me, where people knew what the migrant experience was, but never really understood it. See, I grew up seeing how America loved my people, loved my music, loved my smells, loved my colors, but did not love me. At least not enough to give me a pathway to citizenship. At least not enough to create pathways for people to seek safety, for people to seek solitude, for people to seek what my mom sought for me all these years ago. And yet here I am, able to be able to give back to all those communities. At Arizona Jews for Justice, we really look at how it is that every single person can have a little bit of support. We know that we may not solve the immigration system. We know we may not solve the issue of homelessness. But if for one little bit we can make that person's life better, that for us is a huge game changer. And as Jews, we know far too well, as we're going through Passover, we have a very, very good commandment that talks to us about 36 times, more than any other commandment, that we must love and protect a stranger. And that to us becomes literal. With our work with asylum seekers, we work with local churches here in the Valley to really reconnect people to their families. We have a mobile shower unit that allows people to take showers. Some folks haven't taken showers months, trekking through their journey to get to the United States. We're able to reconnect families by making calls. We're able to feed hundreds of people and make care kits to ensure that their journey hasn't stopped. Most people released here in Arizona have a next destination. And that's where we come in, where we're able to work hand in hand with a lot of the local Latino churches to not only staff volunteers, but also staff logistics and support every single person's journey to get to the next stage. This is so important for us in our work and ensuring that every single person has an access to hope and dreams like I do, like I have. In our work with our unsheltered community, we have a great leader. His name is Brandon Nasanjoya, who is a member of the Hopi tribe. And Brandon knows far too well what addiction is, knows far too well what being in the streets is. And every single day, almost every single day, we have some days off too, we're in the streets where we're able to touch at least 300 people a day. And see, what makes our outreach a little bit different than other folks' outreach. Our mutual aid goes to the people. We have a bus that's called our Let's Be Better Humans bus. You may see it all across the city and all across the valley, to be honest, because we stretch out pretty far. Our bus is doing mobile outreach, not just providing every single thing you can think of, from medicine, over-the-counter medicine that we may have, food, clothing, anything you can think of, we probably have in our bus. We even transform our bus in the summers to become a mobile cooling unit with huge ACs that blow out throughout the back and allows for folks to take a seat and cool off for a little bit. Working in tangent with the city of Phoenix, we've been really, really hopeful and really glad to be able to continue our partnership. Now looking at partnership with Maricopa County and how we support people. Our outreach is also a little bit different because we take our time to sit and talk to people. Being a better human isn't just thinking that you're going to make change. but radically changing the way we look at empathy, radically changing the way we act. We sit down with people, we ask for people's names, how are you? And then we ask, what can I support you with? See, my friends, because we always think about our intent versus our impact. We don't just throw chewy bars at people because some people don't have teeth. So we always lead with a question. How are you? What's your name? And what can I support you with? I'm going to share my screen to show a little bit of kind of our work of our homeless impact, reaching out to those experiencing homelessness. Hopefully my slideshows work. Here we are. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that. Heck yeah.
Looks
So
good.
this is some of our work. You'll see here some of our outreach, and there's our bus. Again, if you ever see us, that's us working here. I really wanted to highlight heat-related illness because it's one of the deadliest killers in Arizona right now. From 2018 to 2020, over 3,000 people have died due to heat-related illnesses. Last year, we went a record-breaking amount of days where we were over triple digits. This is insane to think that in a country so rich with resources, people are dying from heat-related illness. It is awful. Right now, we're going to be already starting to prep our work to support a lot of the cooling centers. We focus on reaching the people that cannot get to the cooling centers. Most of those folks are folks who are not able-bodied, cannot reach certain areas, are elders who are unable to get to cooling centers. This is where our mobile cooling unit comes in handy to be able to reach people in kind of the most unseen areas of the city where folks think, well, where are our people? We end up finding a lot of people. Our impact really has truly been to reduce a lot of the heat-related illnesses. We supply so many water bottles, cooling units, you name it, trying to emphasize to the way in which little things can change somebody's survival. Been working on this for years now, and we're looking to expand again now to Maricopa County. I wanted to show everybody some of our work from Central Phoenix, and now which the zone has been dismantled, even though we still see a little bit of work. All the pictures that we take have been asked with permission of the folks that we help. We never take pictures of people without first asking for permission. And we do this so that we can share their story, not to glorify their struggle. We always make sure that folks know that this is what we're using the pictures for, so that people can hear the struggles of the community members rather than glorifying the struggle people are going to. Homelessness is not just centralized to the zone. We're seeing issues with homelessness all across our city, all across the valley. So we're lucky enough to be able to have our mobile outreach that impacts so many people in so many different places. And that includes our new routes into Tempe, which we've been finding a lot of issues with. We've been finding a lot of issues with folks in government agencies not being too fond of the aid that we're providing to people. And I think that this also continues onto our mission of how can we make supporting people easier and more accessible. And again, some of these pictures are very raw, and I want to focus to make sure that everybody sits in with that discomfort of how raw these pictures are, of what people are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. See, because my friends, we get to go home every day. We get to go home every day, and we get to take showers. We get to have a home. We, as you can see some of our pictures here, we allow folks to take as much or as little as they need. We're not here to dictate what is needed and what is not needed, but rather let folks make that decision for themselves. We have a little clothing store within our shop that everything is free, where folks are able to pick out what they love the most, because my fashion sense and style isn't necessarily replicated to what everybody else wants to wear. So we give everybody else the option. I'm going to stop sharing now. and continue back on the mission of where we are. I think one of the biggest impacts that we have with our communities that we support is providing people the option. For those who are experiencing homelessness, options are robbed from them. They no longer have options. And this is where our work really tries to illuminate a little bit of a difference that makes people's lives better. In our care kits, we include little notes of inspiration that are typically written by 9 to 7-year-olds in our community that most of the time read, "Hello, I am 9. You may not know me, but I hope your day is better today." And I can tell you that throughout all of our outreach, I've seen grown adults cry just by reading those little letters that they receive in their bags. I can tell you that when we translate into different languages, little notes of inspiration that we provide a lot of our migrants, tears just seem to roll faster than anybody could ever think of. And that truly is our mission, to be able to connect people and give a little sparks of hope in a time where hope feels like it is lost, in a time where we feel like we are consistently fighting, in a time where everybody wants to focus on negativity and headlines that divide us more than ever. Kindness always survives and flourishes. And humanity always grounds itself in radical empathy and radical love. And we're so happy to be a part of Secular AZ and be able to talk a little bit about our work. We always need volunteers. We always need donations. There is not a donation that is too obscure that we would not find a way to make use of it. We found a way to make use of a bike with no brakes. We found a way to make use of clothing that people thought would never work. We found somebody that would love them. Every single part of us being able to support is a possibility. I'll finish off with one last thought. My friends, in a time where for a lot of the Jewish community, we think that our job is to really look at repair and how do we repair the world? How do we bring repair? How do we bring in any sort of hope, collaboration, where everything feels like it's caving in? Well, my friends, you start little. You start little by little. And I know my world came into existence when somebody took the time to help me and my mom. So sometimes when we think of fixing the world, we can think locally of how do we fix collective worlds that are here in our backyard, that are here next door, that are here 20 minutes from us. How do we bring in that light of inspiration? Well, you can be a part of that. Thank you so much, Secular AZ, for having me on. And Jeannie, I really appreciate your collaboration and also being a volunteer who just said yes without knowing anything, just said, yes, let me know how it happens. And I would love also to share that the migrant woman that Jeannie helped has been successfully reunited with her family in the East Coast. And thanks to the safety provided by Jeannie, this person is now able to be with her family and have a shot at that American dream.
And I got to call out too, because I know that at least one person that I know that donated to help her get, her TPS renewal and everything is on this call, Mary. And it was so generous and without even a thought, I swear, like I just put a little thing on Facebook. Hey, there's this woman who's a migrant, and immediately it was amazing how my Facebook friends were just so generous. So thank you, Mary, for helping that happen and for her to be reunited. I have a few questions, but then there's a few questions here. Okay. Judy wants to know, where can we drop off donations of clothing? So like I can see, and then Lindsay posted the donation, but I don't think I see anything where you can, like, okay, where do you donate clothing or like items? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Our office is located up in North Scottsdale. Unfortunately, it's a little bit far, but
Okay.
if we can meet you on the bus on a centralized location, we are actively doing outreach all the time. So send us an email. I'm going to put our email here below.
And there was another group, when the Venezuelan migrant was here, there was another group that had all these donations too, that was like in, I don't know, kind of an industrial part, I guess, of like Tempe, kind of that Tempe Phoenix border. Is that this place here? Or is that different?
I, I I'm unsure. I'm
Okay.
not sure if that's the same spot, but I
It,
know
it-
that we can
yeah.
come to you if you have donations. Our bus, being mobile, can come pick up from you. We typically look for pickup when it's big donations. If not, send us an email and we'll send you our address for our office.
Okay. Here is another question coming from Philip. Hi, Philip. Nice to see you on the call today. He says, "You're doing great work. Based on your extensive experience, what do you think needs to be done to address the issue of homelessness? And then what strategies do we need to implement to get these folks back on their feet?" You've got all the answers, right, Eddie?
You and everybody else is asking those same questions, Philip. Um, those are really tough questions because they make us look internally onto what can we do. And I think a lot of us have very simple solutions that we think, well, if we just give people money, if we just give people this, that things solve. But I think to be able to look at starting solutions, we need to take a step back and look at the root of the issues. We need to take a step back and think about what put people into these situations in the first place. And what comes to mind for me is thinking about housing and how Phoenix used to be one of the most affordable cities, and now we're not.
Mhm.
Average cost of living right now is at an $83,000 salary,
Yeah.
84, right in the 80s range. So when we think about what is our some solutions to support that, we need to think about the four basics of survival, right? Shelter, food, um, I'm losing my train of thought, but think about just the basics of survival. Are folks able to have that? Are folks able to have mental health support? Are folks able to have support that not just highlights survival, but highlights living? And when we start to address those issues, we can see that there is new ways for folks to be able to leave homelessness. We've been successful in not just working with the city, but working with resources from 211 and other partners to support people to leave homelessness. But it's a very long journey and it's not an easy one. It's very costly. See, because people think that when you are in poverty or when you are on the streets, that you are on zero, right? That you're on base zero. But folks are not. Folks are in the negative. Folks are below zero. Folks need to be able to get an ID. Folks need to be able to handle debt or issues with addiction that put them at an even below stage. We need to first start addressing these type of issues before we could even comprehend the idea of ending homelessness. We first must address those hard questions and think about how it is that we can come together to think about our community in a community-based approach that looks at humanity first and treating each other as if we were in other folks' situations. How would we want to be treated? And looking forth. And I also want to be clear that this is an issue that is affecting everybody. Business owners are being affected as well. And I also understand that. But there's ways for us to move together where we feel collective empathy to help each other out. And that is a point of understanding that I think also needs to go into our lawmakers for them to be able to make decisive decisions. So, Phil, it is just a snippet of what I think I could answer to that, even though it is a very, very complex question.
Um, I'm sorry, my computer is going very, very slow and I'm trying to close some tabs, so I apologize for that. Because when you shared your screen, it made me feel better about the number of tabs I had open.
Oh yeah, I'm I do a lot.
Trust, I'm terrible. Like people would look at my computer and be like, well, first of all, maybe you could close some of these tabs. And when anyway, a few things came up. Um, I read recently that, and I don't want to get the number wrong, but I want to say that like first of all, there's a couple things. So the one thing that I heard was that the fastest growing population of people who are unsheltered, and this is, I don't know, I think it's in the state of Arizona, it could be nationwide, but is people over the age of 50. So people who are in their like golden years or whatever. I'm over the age of 50. I know people my age who didn't really, have a traditional pathway like a corporate 401 plan or anything. Like I have plenty of friends my age, even those with college degrees who are living paycheck to paycheck and still paying student loans 30 years after they've graduated. Like it's tough out there. So that's one thing that I heard that's one of the fastest growing populations of people who are unhoused. And then I heard another statistic that I want to say it was like 30% of people who are unsheltered came from foster care. So and so I want to ask you first of all, like and I don't expect you to know statistics like that right off the top of your head, but is that like true? Like, is that what you're seeing? Are there trends that you're seeing these days since COVID? It seems like a lot of this really started to happen after COVID, like people got a break, there were no evictions and all the like a freeze on things, but then everything was like, okay, sorry, we're done. Everything's fine. You're all fine, right? So I'd love to hear about what the trends are that you've seen.
Yeah, definitely. Everything that we see on the streets is correlating with those numbers. We see high rises of youth that are exiting out of the foster care system. Unfortunately, once out of the foster care system, a lot of the resources are shut off from people. And what we see is without having really family to advocate for you or stand up for you, it's very, very difficult to have access to resources. We unfortunately see a lot of younger families of folks in their 50 with kids, and that is heartbreaking. That is heartbreaking to see somebody who's so new to the streets, so new to understanding what poverty looks like. And my friends, being unsheltered doesn't just mean that you live on the streets. It could also mean that you live on your couch, on in your couch surfing. It could
Yep.
also mean that you're living out of your car. That is also a part of homelessness.
Hmm.
It breaks my heart when I see and hear little kids doing their homework in a tent. It hurts me. It hurts for me to see trends of people who have degrees, of folks who were teachers, who are new to experiencing homelessness. And when we talk about scary statistics, one of the scariest statistics is that 44% of Americans can't afford a medical bill over $1,000. 44% of Americans. This really sheds an impact on where we are and how anybody, I can promise you, the majority of people are closer in range to being unsheltered than they are to being a billionaire.
And far too many people think of themselves as being closer to being a billionaire than being homeless. It's a whole thing. Yeah, it drives me absolutely crazy. And yeah, I had these two amazing students when I taught at Isaac Middle School. Um they they had fled an abusive situation from a parent and were being raised by their single dad, and like they were homeless. They were basically living in an abandoned home, and we knew, but what are we gonna do? Say, like, I mean, that's their dad and he's doing the best that he could. He had it was a whole thing. And these two boys were just like, they were some of my best students. And when somebody said, by the way, did you know that they live in that abandoned? And I was like, oh my gosh, but that's another thing, like this whole Supreme Court case. I think it's Grants Pass, Oregon, right? And I was reading, there's a guy whose name is Hement Mehta. He's known as the Friendly Atheist, and he wrote an article about it recently. Do you know that the one of the people in that case that supported the incarceration of homeless folks is the church, because there's no shelters that have beds in this area of Oregon, but the church does. And the church will let unsheltered people stay there as long as they commit to being clean and sober. They can't have any pets. They have to work for free for 6 hours a day. They have to attend Bible study. And they are the ones that are saying, yes, please criminalize being unhoused, which I'm just like, the church is doing that. Okay, great.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that there's a lot of hurt that's coming out of places of faith. And I think that it's why it's even more important for folks of faith to also combat that pain that has been caused. Um, and a lot of people don't understand that this is where, again, my point of starting from negatives is something that is incomprehensible to people, because a lot of the common saying in America is, well, pick yourself up from your bootstraps, right? That's assuming people have boots. That's assuming people have the ability to use their digits. That's assuming people are able to sit down. It's a lot of big assumptions. And when it comes to homelessness, a lot of folks, when even just to get into a shelter, you have to be clean. Folks are made to choose between staying with their pets or not, or staying with their partners. There's a huge issue of faith-based shelters that are turning their heads against folks who are queer,
Right.
uh, or only asking for certain items to be given to them if a prayer is induced. And for us, as Jews, one of our core things is to never proselytize. For us, we do the right thing because it's the right thing to do,
Right.
um, not because we have some sort of agenda to bring people into Judaism, but just because the person needs something to eat. And it's very, very, very scary to think of all the pathways people have to take to leave homelessness.
So here's a question from Jay. Jay
Mhm.
asks, curious, is Jews for Justice being supported by other Arizona Jewish organizations?
For sure. We have support from a lot of the JCCs. The JCRC as well supports us. Some of the Jewish pantries, Jewish Family Services is a partner for us when we look at mental health support. We partner with Jewish Family Services. We have great partners at NCJW. We love everything that NCJW does with reproductive rights and reproductive freedom. So we have a pretty good relationship with a lot of the Jewish organizations here. I think that's something, again, that we work in tangent with, is that we are that direct outreach it's looking at how to directly support folks with other folks and other Jewish organizations, looking at that advocacy side a little bit more than we do. And we just work cyclically to be able to support the most amount of people possible.
Okay. Samantha says Phoenix chose a location for a new shelter complex that is zoned industrial, so allowed for such use, but within a certain buffer of residential zones, and therefore had to obtain a use permit with a public hearing. The amount of NIMBY, and NIMBY is not in my backyard, at that hearing was insane. So I guess more of a comment than a question.
Mm.
Yeah, I have a friend who is the landscaping chair on her board on her HOA, and sometimes she'll share with me, like, oh God, like there was a guy who was homeless, who kind of staked out this really, like, not it's just an area that nobody would even really notice. he found a tree, he found some shade, and then like they had to make these decisions, and just hearing the discussions about, well, let's cut the tree down, and I'm like, that's so sad. Like it's sad for the tree, it's sad for the guy, and like if he's not bothering y'all, like I don't know. And I live in Sunny Slope, and Sunny Slope has always had, I would say, a pretty robust population of people who are unhoused, right? And there's a couple of soup kitchens and group homes there and stuff like that. But it's so much different now than it was 5 years ago. It's really, really crazy. Here's a good question. Mars is asking, is it true folks can call 211 and get a ride to the closest cooling center?
From what I know and from what we're trying to advocate, yes. And we're trying to extend that service. I know folks are working right now with the metro, folks are working with the bus system to try to see if we can get rides streamlined to cooling centers. But we don't know what that will really look like, because a lot of the cooling work was first initially handed out to the cities, where the cities had to figure out a system for cooling. But now it's being taken charge by Maricopa County. So we're really interested to see how the county this year is going to look at its outreach support. But from right now, we also know that 211 is getting a little bit of a different look to them. They're trying to look interiorly. How do we make processes a lot easier? We do have a lot of flyers for 211, and we do contact people to provide them knowledge on kind of some resources that we have. Our best case scenario is that we provide free bus rides and bus passes to minimally, at least, folks who are not able-bodied and folks who are seniors, just to start. That would be where we would at least try to see a first step. Ideally, we would love for everybody to have free transportation experiencing homelessness to any cooling center at any time. But we don't know how effective that's going to be to implement, and what it looks like this year. But we're really hoping that we have a successful program. Luckily, we're prepared in case worst case scenario by having the bus be driving around that can drive around our city. But we're hoping for the best in this case.
Um, like also, just going back to the rules and stipulations about being able to stay in a shelter, I wouldn't give up my dog. Absolutely not. No way. I would not give up my dog, because that's like the only consistent thing in your life. Like just to have that companionship. I'm a dog person, so
Mm.
um the other thing I thought of, I bet you you probably know Pastor Angel Campos.
Yeah, love him.
Yes. So when I was on the school board in the Creighton School District, he was also on the board. And then it was, gosh, it was probably like 2018, maybe 2019, when there were like huge waves of immigrants that were coming through, and they were being picked up and basically like dropped off at the Greyhound bus station or whatever. And you had so many hours to be able to pick them up. And so I volunteered there a couple of times, and there's really nothing like it, like I really encourage people, if you can, and trust and believe, there's a lot of people here who probably haven't set foot in a church ever, and maybe like, or in a very long time, but
Mm.
but participating in those, when you're able to welcome somebody who's traveled for so long in such terrible circumstances, it to me was one of the most rewarding experiences, because they hand them basically like a sack of, like like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, maybe an apple and a protein
Yeah.
bar or something like that, but to have a meal that's actually cooked by people who really care. And like for me, I was able to practice my really terrible Spanish with some people, you know what I mean? And then to see the kids just be able to get like a pair of shoes, because they take all their shoelaces off too, like
Yeah.
it's really, really rewarding. Is there a place where you can, like, is there a list of places like where you can go if somebody did want to volunteer and help with the migrants who are coming in and looking for their families?
Totally. Thank you for sharing that story. Pastor Angel is a personal friend. I love him. I actually met him at the streets of the Greyhound, supporting people back in 2018.
Hmm.
This is exactly what you're saying. At that time, ICE was just kind of booting people out into the streets. And we would get calls like, we're seeing a group of about 150, 200 people that is just kind of wandering outside of the Greyhound. What do we do? And this is really where we started mobilizing with the rest of the organizations. Due to security, there is not a clear list of folks who are hosting. I would say the best bet, if you really wanted to support immediately, send us an email and we can probably connect you with some of the churches we staff. But another option would be the Welcome Center. The IRC's Welcome Center always needs volunteers. That is a place to go. But for the longest time, it was really scary to volunteer, especially in that 2018 era. That was when I personally had a gun pointed at me. I had death threats when I was supporting a lot of migrant families back then. And the funny thing is, a lot of the migrants we're supporting have documentation. They have
Oh
their
yeah,
first application
yeah.
for their support through the migrant system. So folks are not undocumented. Counter to popular belief, folks have documentation. So whenever, we would get rioters who would want to riot against the churches and they would say, what you're doing is illegal, I would say, okay, so ICE is right there dropping people off. Tell them that what they're doing is illegal,
Yeah.
because it's not. Seeking asylum is a legal right, and folks are actually going through the right systems to ensure that they are doing everything they want to do right. And I can tell you that the majority of the folks that we are supporting are so eager to be able to learn all the processes that they have to go through. Um, so yeah, there's unfortunately not like a publicized list, but I'm sure if you were to email one of us, the IRC would they would love to connect you.
Yeah. Was the person who pulled a gun on you Jennifer Harrison? Sorry. She's terrible. Because you're right. Like, yeah, when Pastor Campos was helping people, she actually like I guess she tried to go into his church with a gun. And he said, I'm sorry, the only people who would be allowed here would be police officers, and that's only if there was an emergency. So you can't come. And then and she likes to film herself doing
Yeah,
everything. And I think they even did something. I mean, his own home, they threw
yeah,
rocks through his window. These people are not normal.
yeah.
And I would bet you a lot of them call themselves Christians, right? But there's nothing a Christian about their behavior, that's for sure. Okay, comment from Mars, we need more cooling centers. Every business should open its doors. I agree with that. Matt says, I spent one night at a shelter back in the day, never again, less safe than the streets, and so many rules that must don't meet the requirements. Let's see. Mars says I toured Key Campus recently. They have tours monthly, worth a visit to see how things are nowadays. Key Campus equals Human Services Campus. Claudia says that in Tucson there is Casa Alitas, where
Mhm.
they help migrants to continue their journey to sponsors. Also, at the moment, free transportation on trolley and buses. Matt says under the 14th Amendment, all persons not citizens, wait, where'd it go? All persons not citizens are guaranteed equal treatment and access. All right. Yeah. And then, yeah, the Hispanic churches that fight. I remember that because Pastor Campos was actually the spokesperson. I was like, you're in the New York Times. That's crazy. But I couldn't think of a better spokesperson because he is like just really like, want to talk about real Christian? That guy's a real Christian. So let's see. So if people want to get more involved with the work that you're do with the work that you do, like what are your greatest needs, I guess, as an organization right now? Do you need supplies, donations? Do you need, financial donations? Do you need volunteers? What is it?
I mean, I would be silly to say we don't need financial donations, because we have outreaches every single day, with the exception of Saturday and Sunday, and we are out there all day. So you can probably think about how fast we go through a lot of our outreach materials. because not only do we provide donated items, but all of our underwear and socks are brand new that we purchase. All of our food is new that we purchase. So any donation that folks donate goes directly back into the community. It goes immediately back into supporting people with a meal or two, or having fresh underwear and socks.
Mhm.
That is one way. We always need clothing. Clothing flies out the door. We always need clothing. As we're ramping up for our heat season, we need lots of water bottles. How many of you have like 3 or 6 water bottles, just laying around that you just don't use anymore? We will take them. We will clean them. We will sanitize them, and then we will freeze them to have them really icy cold when we're passing
Yeah.
them out. We need help on their bus. Be a part of the bus. There's no better way to feel somebody's situation than to actively be in the presence and to see people. Even if it's just saying hi to people as we're doing our work. But to be seen and to see somebody is crucially important. I think that the biggest killer in the streets, it's not fentanyl, it's not heroin, it's not meth, it's loneliness.
Yeah.
That's what kills you.
And the fact that people look right through you. You know what I mean? Like there's a woman up on 7th Street in Thunderbird that I see frequently, and like she looks like me, like she looks like me. She looks like that. Probably at some point she had all of her shit together. You know what I mean? Like, and I always wondered like what was the thing, because it could be a medical bill. It could be, whatever, that some kind of emergency where you're unable to work, or your car breaks down, right?
Mhm.
It's it's so rarely like these things that people, I guess, envision and dramatize about homeless people being, like you said, unable to pick themselves up by the bootstraps. It could very well mean that they were really, really hardworking people who had a terrible incident happen that wrecked their bank account, you know? It's the humanity. We need to remember each other's humanity. And yeah,
Yeah.
it might be difficult, like if they're clearly maybe having like a psychotic break, but they're no less deserving of our compassion, and even the thing like where people will be like, well, I'm gonna give them food because I don't want them to spend it on whatever, and I'm like, I don't care, there's water and beer. If like that's what they want, like I honestly don't care, because if I was on the streets, maybe I would want to drink beer too. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to judge anybody, and I'm
Right.
certainly not going to make assumptions about why they're there. That's
Yeah,
all.
and I think our job isn't to be that assumption maker. Our job is just to provide. Whenever I give somebody $5, I commonly always hear, well, what if they're going to use it for drugs? But what if they're also going to use it for a burger at McDonald's that allows them to stay in a place that has AC, and allows them to be able to have water, allows them to be able to sit down for a second. What if?
Hmm.
I think there's also a huge implicit bias that every single one of us has been taught to from look away from looking at people who are experiencing homelessness on the eyes.
Hmm.
And I suffered from this, to be honest. I grew up with my mom telling me, don't look at homeless people, just keep on walking by.
Hmm.
Those who are experiencing homelessness, like just avoid them at all cost. That almost like being unsheltered was like a disease, right? Like that it was this like nasty, nasty thing. And I think a lot of us have been taught this implicit bias. And I think it's okay for us to accept it. It's okay for us to be like, you know what, this is an implicit bias that I have, and let me work towards bettering that. And even if you see somebody and you may not even have resources, look at them and smile. Say, have a good day, or I hope
Hmm.
your day gets better. Because at the end of the day, we're just humans.
Yeah. A couple more comments here. Let's see. Excuse me. Lindsay posted. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me go further back. Matt is giving you kudos. Y'all are awesome. Tucson is doing great things with shower trucks and tiny homes. Oh, Tucson. We love you, Tucson. Let's see. And Lindsay says U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. In effect, more than half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck and one crisis away from homelessness. At the root of these systemic failures is historical and ongoing racism. Hello.
Mm.
Matt says, I think we're taught that to keep the empathy turned off. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, I know that, oh, don't look at it. Like, and it was, and in a way, it was like, oh, you're showing empathy by not looking at them because you don't, they're ashamed and embarrassed. So just don't look at them. But no, you're absolutely right. It's a lack of empathy and our way to kind of, it's like, how so many people, like the only way that so many of us can deal with climate crisis, right? Like it's just too much. There's already terrible things happening and it's too much to think about the climate on top of it. Diane says, I love the memo that giving a homeless person $5 says something about me. How they spend it says something about them. I am not responsible for them. I am responsible for me. Amen, Diane. Probably the one and only time you'll hear me say that. Let's see. If we see them and engage, we end up caring and seeing how close we really are to being in their shoes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. Like I was just on the phone with somebody talking about the lack of compassion that we see, like I was talking to somebody about a school board meeting and how these people who show up at school board meetings complaining about, mostly trans kids in bathrooms or book bans or whatever, it's such a privileged place. You're
Mm.
privileged to be able to go to that meeting on a Thursday night and you're privileged to be able to think that, yeah, that you should be the one to determine the fate of a principle that you don't like for some reason. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much privilege going on and such an empathy deficit. We're
Mhm.
suffering from an empathy deficit. And so engaging with organizations like yours is is healing, I feel like, it's healing.
Yeah.
Matt says it's the lie of capitalism. If you work hard, you'll succeed. Every person, every homeless person proves that wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a myth. I mean, my kids can see it. They're in their 20s. This American dream myth of, being able to buy a home and have two and a half kids and a car and a half or whatever the standard was, it's gone. And like you said at the very beginning of this used to be one of the most affordable places to buy a home.
Mhm.
So one more question. Okay, so does your organization do any kind of lobbying at all? Like when you see bills that are going through the legislature that address housing costs or homeless policies, like, do you get involved with that?
As a 501(c)(3), we do advocacy. We do not tread into lobbying, but we do provide advocacy and provide a lot of highlighting and uplifting the voices of the folks that we work with every day when we're looking at these really awful policies that criminalize a lot of our community. We worked with the city and sat in a lot of the city meetings when we were looking at the huge issue with the zone, and we listened to a lot of business owners, to be honest, as well. Radical empathy for us means to really look at both parties affected and sitting with that uncomfortness. And we actually brought some business owners to do outreach with us and really showed them what people go through every single day. And then we actually did outreach with city council. At that time, it was Yasemin Ansari's office that we took out to do outreach in her district. And it was really important for us for elected officials to
Yeah.
physically see what the issues are happening and to feel it and to feel that uncomfort of walking around when it's 100+ degrees. um I think that has been our best approach to advocacy is uplifting the voices of those on the streets and also inviting politicians to be a part of
Mm.
outreach. They can also have a better informed vote or better informed brainstorm when they're looking at policies that affect a lot of folks on the street.
Do elected officials ever like proactively reach out to you to say, hey, like there's this bill and I would like your input on it? Like, do they invite you to those discussions?
I think certain parties do and certain parties don't. I,
What? That's crazy.
I think we can all understand what I'm trying to say. Um, but I think it's not up to us to let them call for us,
Yeah.
but I think it's up to us to be able to be informed and be like, whoa, whoa, I see what this bill actually means and what harm this can cause, and then really mobilizing together to see how we can stop those policies.
Yeah. Um, so okay, I know that there was one bill, and I don't think it ever even got a hearing. I thought it was actually interesting, and the person that somebody reached out to me, and it was about because there are a lot of these progressive churches
Mhm.
and probably maybe mosques and synagogues who are like, we want to help. And so there, I know that there was legislation that they borrowed from the state of California about allowing like rezoning, kind of fast tracking some rezoning so that churches could actually, and it was even written into the bill that they wouldn't be allowed to proselytize. It was simply about making sure that people had a place to stay. And there were,
Mm.
again, like unlike, the place in Grants Pass where they had to commit to working, it wasn't like that either. So did you hear anything about that bill, or do you know anything about that? Would you support that bill?
I would love to learn more. I would love to learn more in how we can protect people from falling ill to a lot of issues that come from faith-based organizations. That I think that I would love to see what parameters protect people the most first before I would say I'd flat out support this. So
Yeah,
I would just like to learn a little bit more. I did hear about that. But for us, we always think about like what is the worst case scenario for people experiencing homelessness, and how can this be weaponized to hurt people? So
yeah,
I always think about that first before I ever really truly sign on. But we're always happy to look at policies and provide some input from what we see every single day, from
yeah,
folks here.
yeah. Well, it is 12:57, so I want to make sure I honor everybody's time. These are heavy discussions, but actually I feel like this one is, a lot of times we're talking about like, domestic terrorism and like, horrible politicians or whatever. At this one, even though we're talking about a difficult topic and a topic that's heartbreaking and that could affect more of us than we would ever care to admit, I still feel like hope because you do really good work. So when you are like, thinking about this summer that's right around the corner, or when you're thinking about like, we need more supplies or we need more volunteers, like what is the thing that gives you hope, Eddie?
You, everybody on this call, everybody who took the time off to listen to Mexican Jewish guys speak about supporting the most vulnerable in our community. Every single person who commented, every single person who shared a thought. Looking at my mom, who's still undocumented, and yet despite that, every single day wakes up with the dream of one day having citizenship. It's the people that keep us going. It's the little acts of radical empathy and radical love that keep me going. That's what my hope is. It's the hope that every single one of us has a little spark of the good deed. You know, I hope every single one of you can do something as simple as freezing water bottles and keeping them in your car so that when you see somebody who needs something, you can smile and give a little water.
Oh my God, I love that. Radical empathy. That is
Mhm.
going to be my mantra for this weekend and going into next week. Radical empathy. I think it's something that all of us could benefit from. And definitely. I'm so glad. I'm so, so, so glad, Eddie, that our paths crossed again. And
Yeah,
I just hope that this is an opportunity. And again, I really do think, like, if you want to offline, we can. Sheila Kruger, she's with Phoenix Atheists helping the homeless. But maybe if you
sure,
guys
sure.
ever want to collaborate, they do good work. You do good work, and you're not proselytizing. You might have a great time.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we're happy to connect. Well, thank you so much for listening to me.
Thanks so much, Eddie. And thanks everybody. And we'll see you next week. Have a great day, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.